Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and we are exploring the nature of the pathologos. One of, if not the most important and significant thing we can do in our lives with our time here on this planet. Wow, what a claim to make. Well, let's see if it's true. The last time we were, so where we are in the text, is we were reflecting on the conditions for the transmission of the pathologos. What's the pathologos? A fundamental false belief about the inadequacy of yourself and the lack of integrity in reality that we carry with us, that's unsuspected. That's the cause of all of our significant problems and being stuck in repeating cycles of the same kinds of problems, the same kinds of negative states of mind, the same kinds of failures, something that we call fate, on the train tracks of fate. And our life becomes a playing out of a kind of dialectic, a conversation or a relationship with this unsuspected false belief that we slowly, over time, integrate into our identity. It's not true, it's negative, it's terrible, and it causes us to act in a similarly unjust way towards others if we don't address it. So we end up being unjust towards ourselves, towards reality, and to anybody else who happens to listen to us or be dependent on us. Usually our own children, so it becomes a kind of family curse that gets passed down. Now, last time we were talking about how the conditions for the transfer of this fundamental, unsuspected false belief, how it's a kind of act. It's a kind of show that's put on. They are acting. They're not actually knowers. They don't really know what they're talking about. They are pretending in a way that most of their life they have been seeking for an opportunity to be. Why is that? Because our soul wants to be knowing. And we need to speak up about what we are most interested in and what's most important to us and what we are most concerned about. The issue is, how do we do it? How do we speak up? Do we speak up in a way that Socrates does, using the logos and the dialectic? Well, hopefully, yes, if you're following this channel and you're reading along with the various different Platonic texts through which we learn about the logos and how to express ourselves, how to know ourselves most fully, and how to express ourselves in the best possible way so we can discover ourselves. Know and show the self. If you want a bumper sticker for your car, there's a good one. We're here to know and show ourselves through the logos and dialectic. There you go. Unfortunately, very few people are aware of the dialectic and the logos. Now, we've been talking about the historical reasons why. That was the first chapter of the book. And we talked about, we saw how our author, Pierre Grimes, was fighting Hitler and realized that he was walking down the same road that the Roman soldiers used to keep out the barbarians hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And he realized we're not learning. We're stuck in the same repeating cycle of problems, destruction, suffering, and we ain't learning from our problems. So that was crystallized in a kind of question that our author wrote is one of the fundamental questions behind this whole book. Why can we be so rational and mature towards many other things, but why do we remain so fundamentally immature and irrational towards ourselves? Why are we not understanding ourselves and the problems that we have as individuals and as a race? That's a good question. That's the question of the pathologos. So we can see it play out socially, historically. So back to our question, we are seeking to express or know and show ourselves, but the way in which we do it is a problem. As we said, we're learning the art or the virtue, the art of all arts, the dialectic, a way that we can reflect and understand, the model of understanding, which is itself the spiritual tradition, again touched on. This text pointed out that the same dialectic we discover by reading Plato, we're applying to our problems. So we're returning to the Platonic tradition, having improved it, ending up with what would be, therefore, a complete, or the complete, not just the complete or the new paradigm for understanding human problems, but also the new paradigm or the actual paradigm of spirituality. What does that mean? No need for divisions, no need for exclusions, no need to pay a fee to join the spiritual quest to know yourself. No need to pick a team. Are you Buddhist? Are you Taoist? Are you Palestinian? Are you Jew? Are you Protestant? Are you Catholic? No need. Are you human? Hey, even that's not its distinction. Do you have language and the ability to reflect on yourself? And the desire to be good in a true way? If so, you're in. You're in. Pick up the Logos, pick up the Platonic text to discover the Logos and dialectic applied to the true nature of self and reality, and also pick up this book to discover the false idea of self and reality that's sitting in its place, causing our problems. So last time we talked about how remarkable and curious it is that such a significant thing, this fundamental false belief about ourselves and reality. Oh, sorry, let's... I've gone off the topic. The question we're asking is the way in which we want to express ourselves. The urge to know and the urge to show to self is a good one. Only last time we saw that the way that we're doing it is not through purifying what's false in philosophical midwifery and developing an understanding, experience, knowledge, wisdom, and art of what's true. We're not actually learning how to express ourselves. We are instead imitating. Our imitation of people who were acting, bullshitting, cosplaying, pretending to be knowing, and pretending to express what is true about self and reality. Those people in this particular simple scene from our childhood, they became our model for what it means to be excellent, for what it means to be great, for what it means to be knowing. And so we have a question. Why is this urge to imitate something that's false more powerful, more popular, more devastating, more powerful even than our desire to actually have knowledge, actually have the Logos, actually know self and show self? Our desire for improvement and wisdom. And last time we talked about we read about how the urge to likeness is more primitive than a more evolved desire to truth. This is key. Now we can reflect back on our evolution as a species. What kept the human species alive before we developed the ability to reflect on ourselves using a pattern, using a principle, using a model, using integrity? Right, what is the truth? It's not just whatever you like. There has to be a way of understanding. Before we had that as a species, how did we survive? Well, here is where the urge to be like the appearance played a role to keep us alive at the expense of our individual goals, of course, but it kept our species alive in the caveman days. So we can see that the great problem of the pathologos was a kind of solution, a solution that no longer applies. Just as the pathologos in our lives is a solution, it's a way of making sense of the confusing puzzle of our childhood. that may have kept us alive, kept us a member of the tribe, kept us accepted, given us a role, allowed us, prevented us from the perhaps devastating realization that the people we were dependent upon were not as great as we wanted them to be. So it's a kind of solution from our childhood that no longer applies in the real world and keeps us bound to fate, bound to our problems, and not learning. Why? Because, as we read last time, imitation is stagnant. You can't develop through imitation. You can't learn. You can't get better. You are stuck in whatever stupid opinions and prejudices and ways of being and ignorance you have. Now we have some new. So just to conclude, that's the issue. The urge to imitate a likeness is more primitive and therefore more powerful as a species than our more evolved desire for truth. There's the issue. Now, with truth, you don't have to imitate, it's yours. That's a big question. Sometimes we get people on this channel who say, hey, what do you believe about God? Or what do you believe about philosophy? And it's always the same answer. We're not interested in belief. Belief is in the realm of midwifery. We're interested in understanding. That's philosophy. Socrates very explicitly says this. Can't get stuck in belief. Understand. And if there's an understanding, there has to be a model. That's what we're learning, the dialectic, the structure of the logos. That can be used in conversation, that can be used in reflection, that can be used in our exploration, that can be used in understanding a text, can be used in understanding music and geometry, and so on and so on. It's the structure of that which unfolds through the logos, all understanding. So we can understand using a model, which is always going to be true. No need to pick sides. No need to blow up people if they have a different opinion, because we're not interested in opinion anymore. Understanding. And what do you do with your understanding? You use it. Otherwise, what good is it? So you can verify through your understanding the things that you are understanding. Now, what's curious about philosophical midwifery is you are understanding the cause of your problems. Meaning, if you go out and apply your understanding, you should be able to experience a verification that you have freed yourself from the problems you formerly had. The former doubts, fears, states of mind, silly ways of acting that sabotage yourself, they're gone. To the level that you've understood your pathologos and judged it to be false and unjust. Is the key word, justice. We can't accept a view of reality in ourselves that are unjust. Which means we also have to be learning philosophy, because the greater we understand the idea of justice, which is philosophy, which is why we read Plato, the easier it is to see the difference between true justice and its imitation or its shadow or its distortion. So last time we were reading about how, yes, belief and understanding. So we're interested in understanding in philosophy and even understanding belief, which is curious because one thing that Pierre Grimes talked about is how if you understand development as rising to a greater level of whole, a greater dimension, then the higher one can look back with a greater vision of the one below it and can act as a teacher. What does that mean? You can't belief your way out of problems caused by belief. If you recognize that in terms of cognitive functions, there's image thinking, ignorance, belief, and above belief, what's greater than having to believe somebody else or imitate? Actually understanding it for yourself. And we talked about how any skill requires that. When you're an apprentice, you never, ever, ever are told, just believe me. You're always made to understand. You have exams to show that you understand. and you should have to prove your understanding and experience. If you're a mechanic, actually fix a car, actually replace the gasket. Yeah, that's a thing in cars. So what? So if you have a problem caused by the cognitive level of belief, you can't use other beliefs to solve it. You can't see it. You have to use understanding. That's what we're developing. So what are we doing? Recognizing that we are enslaved by a parasitic false belief called a pathologos. So our problems are caused by a certain belief, and we are ourselves, through reading this text with patience and integrity and carefulness and sharing it with our friends, we are raising to the level of understanding that will allow us to free ourselves from the problems caused by belief. And we're also understanding that our most significant problems are caused by belief. Using understanding to free ourselves from the problems caused by belief. Isn't that great? Yes. Yes, it is. Now, as we like to do sometimes on the channel, we can use the principle of metaphor, or as above, so below, and see if we can gain insight into our social situation, our political situation, the species. So, oh, does that insight shed light on where we are as a species? Are we as a species attempting to solve problems caused by fundamental false beliefs without raising to the level of a paradigm of understanding, a principle of understanding that every single leader should be adhering to, that we can objectively verify, because it's not about who you like or who you vote for or what religion you were grown up with, because those are all beliefs and opinions. No, we're not. We're at the level of belief, and we are suffering a terribly unjust system of exploitation, war, genocide, capitalism, fascism, so on and so on. Many, many problems caused by false beliefs. And we don't seem to be able to solve them because the solutions are always, well, I believe. And every time you see somebody, I don't know, some reporter or some politician finally standing up to an injustice, you might have some hope in your heart, but then he utters the first couple of words, well, I believe, and then you facepalm. No, that's not how you solve problems of beliefs. No, you don't say, well, I believe it's wrong to do a genocide. You say, no, it is wrong objectively. We can understand it's wrong and prove it's wrong. Therefore, it's a principle that applies to everyone. Just as the Nazis are not, it's bad for Nazis to do genocide, it's bad for Zionists to do genocide, and colonizers to do genocide, and so on and so on. But they don't. They say, well, I believe, and then you throw your remote at the TV, or you throw your wireless mouse at your monitor. Why? Because that's attempting to solve the problems caused by belief, by the beliefs, and they're not appealing to principles. But hopefully, the more people get into philosophical midwifery, the better our society will be. The more people will realize this is a true fact and not just an opinion. And we'll be able to live in a better world. So, again, that's a metaphor. Yes, it helps us shine light on our problems as a species, but most primarily, we need to do the work ourselves. The more we are free from our pathologos, the better we will be able to communicate that true fact. The more we are free from our pathologos, the more we are free to actually get into philosophy and understand the nature of the good. So that all of our efforts to make a more good world, or a more just world, are actually motivated by true understanding, dianoia, and nous, direct experience. and maybe even a way of being called phronesis that we are wondering about as we read. In other words, you are the most important thing, your development of the soul. Yes, we can understand our species. Yes, we can understand our current political environment. Yes, we can understand the historical and evolutionary causes of our problems, but nevertheless, you can free yourself from the problems that you have yourself, whether or not anybody agrees. So that's great. And confetti. So last time we read how such a significant, devastating problem, psychic parasite, can be caused by such a simple, unsuspected scene, or a scene that we don't suspect is the cause of our problems. Isn't that amazing? Okay, and then as a result, our life becomes a living dialectic, not on the good one, integrating our dianoia and nous, our understanding of self and reality, dianoia, and our direct experience, some call enlightenment or yoga experiences or whatever, a direct experience of self and reality, nous, two things that you get from the dialectic applied to truth and being. Our life could be a constant participation with our friends and ourselves and our dreams in a dialectic about the truth of self and reality, which will have the effect of integrating it into our own identity, recognizing that what we are experiencing in reality itself is the mind itself, the first emanation from the self, and beyond that, its cause is the self. So truly knowing oneself. That could be our life, could be fun conversations to have over coffee, instead of, I don't know, gossiping about Tom Cruise or being exploited for the extra billions for the already billionaire class who get their billions from exploiting our time, our value, and our energy. Could be a better way of being. But if we're not doing that, what are we doing instead? This. We're still doing a dialectic. We're still a walking dialectic. Only what we are in a conversation with is this false image of self and reality, and what we are integrating it into is our idea of ourselves, which manifests as our persona, our mask, our way of being, our way of talking, and so on. And you can imagine how bad that would be, and how that would affect your death and your possible reincarnation. And if, like in the Republic, there's any choice about our next incarnation, if you're identifying with this garbage and you think that's good and just, you're probably going to come back into something in a similar situation. Socrates talks about that being the imprisoned in reincarnation, which is fascinating because it's the exact same cycle, imprisoned, stagnant, repeating cycle of the same sorts of failure based on the same ignorance over and over again that plays out in our lives, that we're attempting to address here, plays out also as above, so below in reincarnation. Isn't that interesting? The answer is yes, very interesting. Very interesting. Now, all of those things are things that we are understanding. How? By seeing the parts, seeing the pattern, applying it to the paradigm, seeing how it must necessarily be so, seeing a beauty, the way the parts come together. But understanding is just a hypothesis. Therefore, we should be able to confirm that hypothesis in our direct experience, which is important because in the Phaedo, Socrates talks about how that's what real philosophy is. Actually verifying that by using the dialectic as the method to actually separate your soul from the body and having a look around at what happens. So it's not just a belief or faith or any kind of belief. You have to go beyond belief to understanding and then verify it. So isn't that neat? Yes, very neat. So let's jump back and do some more reading. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for the new chatters and the new watchers on YouTube. Some great questions and some great reflections, and I encourage you to keep up with it. It can be difficult because the way that we are taught to learn is take our new things and try and patch them into our belief structure we're already carrying. Like, imagine our beliefs and way of viewing the world as a cloak we wear. We might learn some new things and we sew it on as a patch. Or maybe we realize there are some holes in the cloak we're wearing. There are some holes in our way of seeing the world, some things that don't make sense, and we take that patch and we sew it on. Another way of taking in new information is trying to make that new information fit the shape of the beliefs you already have. In fact, the many different ways that people can take on new information is a very good topic. It's covered in this book, Jesus and Socrates, A Dialogue in Heaven. The last published book before Pierre Grimes, the author we're reading, passed on. Fantastic. Fantastic. Lots of puzzles. So, and fundamentally the puzzle of how do we take in new information? Now, I'm bringing that up now because this is the book we're reading today. Some new people who are commenting on YouTube are struggling with that, trying to fit their current way of seeing the world with this one. And I'm doing my best to encourage them to not do that. Not try and fit one to the other, not try and patch one up with the other, but try and see this as a whole. Try and put aside your past beliefs and see this just in the text. Now, you can develop questions like, oh, but I really, really believe in this. Phrase it as a question, polish it up nice, get it into a sentence, as few words as possible, maybe even using the structure of the dialectic, and carry that question, share it with us, put it in the comment section, join our Discord for free, link below, and share that question, and we can all carry that question. Some of us might have a similar belief system, or a similar belief we got from a similar culture or religion. We might have a similar question. Maybe we've never thought about that question. That's the channel. We're not debating each other, we're sharing our wonder. I might not have thought about that question before, and someone said, hey, by the way, if this belief is true, how does it fit in with the pathologos, or something like that? You can take that as a question. And the more we read, the more we'll be able to see into that question. Gain insight. But we're not trying to save false beliefs. It can be difficult. So I encourage people who are watching on YouTube to do that. Don't try and fit it in with what you already believe. Try and see this as a complete whole in and of itself. And then you can ask questions about how it fits in with your beliefs, or your beliefs. They're not yours if they're beliefs. Beliefs that you had before, or things that you like. You might just want to believe something because you just wish it was true. You hope it was true because you really like the idea. That's fine. You can compare them so long as you're reading this as a whole. Another message to new people, especially those who are taking up this quest, who have a motivation to understand it in a new way, rise to a new level of understanding that allow you to reflect on and free yourself from the problems caused by beliefs, raising to that greater level of whole understanding. It gives you the potential to free yourself from the problems caused by beliefs. I think there's a saying that's common. I think maybe it's attributed to Einstein. You can't solve a problem by the same way of thinking that caused the problem. The essence of that, but applied to the logos, to cognitive levels, ways of thinking, belief, understanding. Can't solve a problem caused by beliefs by the same level of cognitive functioning that caused it. Belief. So, to the new people who are watching and are taking on the quest to develop a new way of understanding, a new way of understanding, stay with it. Stay with it. Stay on the path. Keep going. You hit a hurdle, keep going. Eventually, you'll have an understanding that will allow you to remove those hurdles, so it's just clear sailing. But until you get to that level of understanding, you have to be jumping those hurdles to keep reading so that you can develop their level of understanding. In other words, you're doing a Olympic hurdle race. Because the blocks, the power of our problems are to block you from this, from evolving, from reaching higher levels of wholes. Going from beliefs to understanding is a very meaningful goal. We just talked about how it's the problem of the human species. It's the next stage of our evolution. We are stuck in a cycle of problems caused by beliefs because we're trying to throw more beliefs at them and not rise to a level of understanding. Politicians can just lie and contradict themselves because there's no principle that says you shouldn't. Principles are the realm of understanding, existing and being. That's the logos. So we can see that going from beliefs to understanding is a very important goal, and perhaps the level of evolution and development we are on as a species. Therefore, if we have blocks and problems, they're gonna block you from doing it. In other words, the very problems that we are learning to understand by reading this text will surface to stop you from continuing to read this quest. We've already read that. They are a psychic parasite for many reasons. They sap your energy. It's not you, but it also defends itself. It tries to stop anything that can threaten its existence. Which means if you are in this game and you're watching this podcast, this channel, maybe you're reading the book as well, keep going. You are more than likely going to hit blocks. Things that will make it feel like you can't do it anyway. Make you feel like you're not good enough, do it anyway. Make you feel low energy, tired, incapable, do it anyway. Jump those hurdles and keep running. They're not real. They will feel real. They will feel more real than anything until they don't, which will free you to experience higher levels of reality. That you recall and remember, oh, this was far more real than those things that I took as real. That's one of the types of ways people give accounts of this rising to a higher level of whole. Maybe you're familiar with people who've had out-of-body experiences or yoga experiences, and one of the things they claim is, that they say about it is, I can't believe I thought that other stuff about myself was real. I can't believe I was hung up about that my whole life. That's not real. This was real. That kind of thing. But so long as they're there, they'll feel real. So we jump the hurdles and we keep going anyway. Now, one of the questions we have is that virtue? Sounds like courage. To do what the logos understanding is saying is true, even though it doesn't feel like it's true. Courage. Now, at the end of that hurdle race, jumping the hurdles on the Olympic race, at the end, the finish line, you'll have understanding, which means you can turn back around, go back, and use that understanding to move those hurdles off the track. That's literally the art that we are learning here. The understanding that will allow us to free ourselves from the blocks or hurdles caused by our beliefs. Which means what? Which means the next lap will be a lovely free stroll because you've cleared the track. So my message is to keep going. Expect counterattacks. When they come up, recognize and go, oh, you really seem real, but you ain't. I'm going to keep going anyway. Well, this voice tells me if I keep going, it'll be the worst thing ever. It'll be disaster. I'll go to hell. My soul will burn or something. Sounds very scary and comes with a lot of doubt. Oh, fear and doubt. Interesting. Oh, that's not real, is it? That's the pathologos. I'm going to keep going anyway. So that's some words of encouragement. But also understanding. What I just said, the expectation of the kinds of blocks that will get in the way, that will cause you fears, doubts, tangents, telling you you're not good enough, sap your energy. The idea that you can, number one, expect them and they're not real and keep going anyway. Your job is to understand why that has to be the case. Don't just believe me, because I've gone through it, because I've run the race, or am running the race. But understand it for yourself. Why must that be true? Because that will allow you to anticipate it and expect it. Go, oh yeah, I know you. And what we are learning about here is this level of understanding allows us the ability to free ourselves from those problems caused by belief. So understand why you should keep going. But also know that you have friends who are also running the race alongside you in the lanes next to you. So we're giving you a high five as you run. So, hooray. Okay, so speaking of running the race, let's jump in and keep reading. Here we are in the text. Okay. Last time we talked about how greatness, beauty, and justice are all tied to this model, this imitation. So these are, so we can, and I encourage you to do this, create a hierarchy. Let's do it together. So what are we doing? Creating a hierarchy. We talked about the significance of understanding. Part of understanding is seeing the terms in a hierarchy. So we've seen greatness. We've seen beauty. B-E-A-U-T-Y. We've seen justice. As we're reading here. Come together as a model against which all else are compared. So these come together to create a model. Now, which is fun because we are also asking, what's the paradigm of the logos? If there is a principle of understanding that our world needs to have, our soul needs to have, is that also a model? Is that the word paradigm? Only it's not the imitation of greatness, beauty, and justice, but greatness, beauty, and justice is our aspect, justice itself, are aspects of that model. Now, the Greek word for the aspects of the paradigm is eidos. So whenever you're reading a Platonic text and you come across the word forms, make this face and go like this. Because it's not form, it's literally eidos, which means the aspects of being that you can behold directly in nous, meaning it's knowable. Whenever anybody uses that terrible misquote of Socrates, I'm so wise because I know nothing. That's not the words that he said. Because he said, I'm so wise because I know what knowledge is. I'm not going to mistake something knowable that isn't knowable, meaning he is familiar with what is knowable. That's nous. What are the things that are knowable? The eidos, the things you can behold directly. which is what we're talking about as what confirms our understanding. So we have belief down here, which is all sad and miserable, but understanding frees us from having to believe the guys with the funny hats or the robes or carrying the staffs or getting you to pay money to go to church or whatever. You're free from these jokers for understanding, but also understanding can be verified in your own direct experience. Whatever you can understand a skill or an art, and then you can use it. But what we're understanding in dianoia, in philosophy, is the eidos of greatness, the eidos of beauty, the eidos of justice. So that experience of our understanding, that's the eidos. That's nous, and the word eidos means to behold. So you can literally behold them. Now we're talking about cognitive functions or senses, the sense that we have in our consciousness that can turn around and know itself, which is the goal of most meditations. That's called ousia. So the mind can turn around and know itself in various different aspects. That's the eidos. The mind can know itself as greatness itself, as beauty itself, as justice itself. So what did we just do? We just took what we're reading about the false to gain a greater insight in what's true. So we're learning about philosophy as we go in midwifery. Hooray. So we are also hierarchically arranging this. So knowing that greatness, beauty, justice is a model against which all is compared. Talked about last time. So, do you want a beautiful wife? What's your model of beauty? Why does Jessica keep getting in a relationship with the same sorts of guys that abuse her? I wonder. Well, this is why. I don't wonder. I do wonder, but we can also understand. Okay. The way in which they're manifested is the differences. It's the ideal for the group. Standards of behavior. Okay, so from these, we have these are the. This becomes the ideal for the group. Is our society defined by group thinking? What group are you in? What team are you in? Are you red or blue? Are you pro-life or pro? Are you pro-choice or pro abusing women? What team are you in? Do you want to punish women as a way of playing out your pathologos? Telling them what they can and can't do? Or are you pro women having the ability to think for themselves? And what team are you in? Standards of behavior. Standards of behavior within the group. There you go. Signs of being accepted. Now, this is also the stuff that we will rub up against when we try and learn a new way of being. To be expected. For instance, in this, if you get into this way of being, you might find that there are certain ways or standards of behavior that were accepted or encouraged or made you really, really good in other groups. Like I was just talking about, shooting down women. We're on the internet. So a lot of people, the incel culture, have a way of being within a group where they put down women And this might come up when trying to be in a new group with a new way of being, which is important because if it comes up, it's not a blame game. Our job is to reflect on it, self-reflection, ousia. Oh, you're using this anti-women rhetoric. By the way, where does it come from? No, it's true. I know it's true. No. If it was true, you'd be able to phrase it in a dialectic. It would have to have understanding. It would have to reflect the logos. We'd have to be able to verify it in experience. But you're not. You are espousing a belief. We're not going to kick you out of the group because that's not the standard of behavior within this group. The standard of behavior of this group is self-reflection relative to the logos. Are you willing to do that? That's the game. To say, oh, you have to have no problems from other groups to be in this group, you're going to be a very lonely group because every human being has pathologos. In other words, no one's perfect. If you are playing the game of punishing or canceling or attacking or ganging up on or getting one up on or crushing in a debate other people who happen to have made a mistake, then you are acting unjust, immature, because you do the same thing to yourself. You have mistakes. All human beings have mistakes, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So, this will come up. Standards of behavior that are relevant to other groups, especially if you're trying to be your best. Why? Because greatness is the model that becomes our standard of behavior. So the more you're trying to be your greatest, the more likely these things are going to come up, which is devastating. One very easy example is you've got a crush on someone who seems the most beautiful, and you want to be your greatest self to impress her. And then you end up being the worst thing you can be because that's your standard of greatness that's your image of greatness that became a model that you imitate when you want to be great. It doesn't work in the real world. You can't be a jerk to women in that way, even though it was this model, pathologos model. So it's fascinating that it's when we want to be our best that this comes up. So also signs of being accepted. Accepted within the group. Now already we can start to see something. What are we seeing? We are seeing a list that has a repeating element. So we might be in the division stage of a dialectic. And the conclusion requires you to pull out a repeating theme. Notice they're all to do with groups. That's just a little thing you can notice because we've had experience looking for the dialectic. So we can start to notice it. Oh, is that a definition? Is that a demonstration? Is that a division? Is that a conclusion? Looks like division, doesn't it? Now, if you didn't see it, doesn't matter. We're not doing that right now. Acceptance within a group. The signs of being accepted are framed or structured around the appearance of these qualities. Notice appearance. These are all based on appearance. Based on appearance. Appearance. We are reading the Meno. Meno uses the word appears a lot. So when we talk in the dialectic or when we reflect on ourselves, one way of making or seeing patterns is the repeating themes. Another way is a key term that it all hinges upon. Excuse me. Appearance of these. Let's just move it to the side a little bit. Come on, mousy mouse. Sometimes my mouse doesn't want to slide. Appearance of these qualities. So Meno uses the word appearance. It appears in a certain way, and Socrates picks up on it. So do you catch yourself using the word appearance when you're talking to your friend? Is he using the word appearance a lot in this particular conversation? It could be key. Once established, players play within that standard. They become like their roles. So they play and they identify with their roles. Okay. So this becomes play, the role they play. That becomes roles played within that standard. Standard. And then, as we talked about being a walking dialectic, then you become like their roles. So there's our walking dialectic. We become, over time, we become like that role. You can start out as a kid pretending. So you can see the little kid yelling at the adult, just like mum yells at other adults, and it can be funny because they're little and it's nonsense. Or you see little kids swearing like an adult. That's adorable because it's funny because we can see that we can see that their true self, because they're young, a lot of their true self is continuing to shine through, is very different from that role. That's what's funny. When you see two things and you can see the difference, that's when you laugh. But over time, it ain't no laughing matter because they become like that roles. It's not just a cute little kid swearing like mum or dad. They just swear now. And then after they become like it, they become identified with it. Become. Notice the word becoming. Another key term. The more you become familiar with the logos, the more you can recognize key terms. Appearances. Why did I recognize appearance as a key term? Well, because Socrates recognized it as Meno. But also, we've been talking about different cognitive levels. Let's write it up. Cognitive functions. The different things we can do with our mind. Different ways we can think and experience. Functions. Cognitive functions. We talked about going from belief to a whole different level of understanding. And beyond that, you can actually confirm it in nous. And then beyond that, there's the realm of phronesis. And then this is just from the Phaedo and the Republic. And And then beyond that, there's a question mark, because in the Phaedo, Socrates says, oh, I'm not going to tell you about the level above Renaissance. We talked about that being certain principles of this. So this would be, upward movement would be rising to greater level of wholes. Wholes. Becoming more holy in the good way. We also talked about how on the other side of it, let's move it over a little bit. Oh, yeah. Oh, come on, mouse. On the other side of it, going down, let's use green. You have, going down, you have the ability to teach, guide, or have mastership. Guide or have mastership from the greater levels to the lower levels. So we're talking about learning understanding by reading the text, which will allow us to have mastership over belief. And mastership is needed for an art. Mastership, art. So again, take this as a question. Can we see this reflected in the text? Now, what's curious about this is each of these different cognitive functions, and if you want to be fancy, impress your friends that talk like this. You can call, just for fun or to sound fancy, you can call the cognitive functions epistemology. Why would you want to? I don't know. You sound like you're sometimes people who think that being a philosopher is to have a lot of these and also have fancy words. They'll say, well, onto epistemologically, and now you know what they mean. Cognitive functions is epistemology if you want to be fancy. Epistemology. How do you spell it? Oh goodness. There's another. So one of the reasons that we don't like big words is it's gatekeeping, makes it, you know, makes philosophy, which is everyone is doing this anyway, it's your job, makes it sound like you have to be super book smart. And it's a way of people saying, well, if you don't know this big word, you can't get to play. Another way of excluding, another way of justifying paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for a degree. But another problem with it is, with big words, is you have to spell it, which can be tricky. So here's an example of what happens if you go down this line. See, that's how you end up talking. And spelling, E-P-I-S-T-E. There's an E there. Okay. So you have to waste time spelling. Epistemology. That doesn't look right. Episte. Episte. Yeah, there it goes. Mology. Now, why am I using this big word now? Because this often is used in conjunction with another big word, ontology. Now, they're objects so the things that you can have beliefs about, the things that you can understand, the things that you can have nous or knowledge. The English word in the translations is knowledge, but we use the word knowledge to talk about physical things. Nous is not about physical things. Understanding is not about physical things. These are about the logos. In fact, everything above this line is. Anyway, so what? So the objects, the things you can have beliefs about, are appearances. The things that you can have nous is being. Different realms of reality. So they're objects. That's called ontology, which is a fancy word that sometimes is used along with epistemology. Ontology. Looks funny. Which means being. What are the realms of being? Ontos is the word for being. So what are the things and how do we think about the things? There you go. Now you're fancy. Now, the reason why I recognized appearance as a key word is because that's the object of belief. So when we were reading the Meno and he said, oh, it appears to be that way, Socrates laughed and said, it's very tragic that you haven't been initiated into the realm of being, which is an ontological level, that you can actually have knowledge about, that you can actually have understanding about. So it's a spiritual thing. If by spiritual you mean the part of your spirit or psyche that is able to experience an ontology that's not just physical. That's what education's for. It's not how we do it now, which is a great tragedy, why we have to reawaken philosophy, why we're in the problems we're in. Okay, but we also recognize it here. We are seeing that we are looking at pathologos, which is a kind of belief, and we are seeing okay, let's just use the arrows. Oh, so slow. Here we go. We are seeing that the pathologos is based on these aspects, which have their existence in dianoia, understanding, and nous, in being. But in the realm of the pathologos, there's the realm of belief. So this is the model for group thinking, for an ideal. Why do people love Trump? Well, he's the ideal of that group way of thinking. How can you lie the most? How can you be sexist the most? How can you scam people the most? For people who think that, people who should have mastership over here should have an art from a cognitive apprehension of a greater level of wholes from those that they rule over. In other words, a doctor should have an understanding and experience and art of a greater level than me as the patient. Then you might be puzzled. How can someone so cartoonishly lacking, cartoonishly unjust like Donald Trump, how can there be so many groups of people who love coming together as a group, love wearing the American flag pants, and love having the really big trucks with the American flag vote for Trump stickers on them? They love groups. How can they be so mistaken about someone with an art and understanding? If that was your doctor, you would say, no way in hell. Clearly, I'm not going to you as a doctor. How can they be so mistaken when it comes to Trump? Well, they're not looking for an art, are they? They're looking for something within the group. The fact that he is so cartoonishly unjust shows you that he is the ideal for that group. He is most ideally a liar, a billionaire, a scammer, hates women, racist. He is the ideal racist. Like, nobody who supports Trump is really defending that he's saying he's not a racist. No one thinks he's not a racist. No one thinks he's not a liar. No one thinks he's not a scammer. Part of the role might be lying, because lying is part of the ideal. And when they talk to people who aren't in the group, they might pretend that he's not racist. But yeah, part of his appeal is he appeals to racists. They know he's racist. So you can be like so confused. There's no confusion if you recognize the pathologos. The fact that he is so cartoonishly, clownishly, obviously racist, that makes him the ideal. It also makes it the standard. Which is why all of these racists and sexists and bootlickers for billionaires are coming out of the woodwork. So that's one positive about Trump. Brings them to the surface. You're removing the old log and all of the bugs are showing themselves. Now, that's not, that can be a dangerous analogy. We're not talking about humans as bugs, but the unsuspected false beliefs that are infecting otherwise good human beings. And the things in our culture we need to address. Rip the Band-Aid off. By the way, if you're not racist, how well are you going to be accepted? By the way, the longer he is in the public eye, the more people will become like him. Society will deteriorate. January 6th. More people will become Nazis. Now, what are we doing? We're using understanding to reflect on problems caused by the level of belief. None of this is an opinion. You don't have to vote for me for this to be true. This is just the thing that you can see for yourself if you develop understanding. Isn't that neat? You don't have to like pull your hair out. Oh, why can't I convince all these Trump supporters that he doesn't have an art? You don't have to convince them. Because it's understanding. It's open to everybody who wants to understand. So, that's Trump. That's this society. That's others. Easier to see in others, but also yourself. If we have an unsuspected pathologos, which we do because we're human, until we master midwifery, of course, that's the sort of question. Do you completely free yourself from pathologos? Or do you have mastery over it because you now recognize it? I don't know. That's one of the questions we can carry with us. That's a biggie. Nevertheless, when do we... Now, you might recognize it in yourself. All of a sudden, you kind of feel like you've got a mask on. You kind of feel differently. When a certain kind of person is like, oh yeah, and then you kind of feel warmth for a sort of person that, like, why do I really want to be friends with this person? Why do I want this person to accept me? Why do I feel really optimistic about the possibility of being friends and having a good relationship with them? But then they'll let you down. I wish that person wasn't such a jerk. And I can't believe I tried to be nice to him. I can't believe. Why did you want to be accepted by that kind of person? This is your Trump. This is your pathologos. Desire to be accepted within the certain group. This person must have reflected your false model of greatness, beauty, and justice. But what's interesting is we can feel it. You can recognize it. When do you put on a mask? When do you feel a certain weird way that lends you or ends up with you tending to be fake? and ending up pissed off at that person. Why did I share too much? Why did I trust that person? Why did I believe in that person? In other words, yes, we can understand society, but it's for us to recognize within ourselves so we can become free. We can level up. So we become identified with that role. Oh yes, so we were talking about the word appearance. So this is because all of these things to do with belief are to do with appearance, because of our understanding of midwifery and because our understanding of the cognitive functions from reading Plato, the Republic. If my mouse wants to move, here we go. We recognize that belief is the realm of appearance, that's the object, whereas Socrates says, by the way, the things that you actually want to understand, the immortal things of being, like truth and justice and beauty, they are beyond belief. You can't have belief about those guys. They're beyond it. It's not a belief thing. It's a dianoia thing, understanding being thing. It's a nous thing, experiencing it and knowing it all at once thing. Not a belief thing. That's how come I could recognize it, and that's why I put it in a capital letters. So we become identified. Identified. Why is that in capital letters? It's a key word. Why? Because we know, well, we recognize from philosophy, identified, that the primary thing is to know the self, to know and show the self. What are you really? And we know from midwifery that the cause of our problems is a false image of ourselves. What's that called? Identity. You're either identified with this or you reach a recognition of your true identity as the one self. So if, by the way, so you can say, well, we're trying to realize our true identity in philosophy through the logos and dialectic. But not everyone's a philosopher. Yes, you are. You either are doing it the right way or you're doing this. You're still doing it, only if you're not doing it consciously, this is what you'll be doing anyway. Humans are philosophers. We're just doing it on the wrong thing. But we're not becoming identified with the one self through dianoia and nous and dialectic. We're becoming identified with the role. The role. Greatness, beauty, and justice is in the imitation that becomes our model. It's the ideal for the group, the standard of behavior, signs of being accepted. When they do it to you, all right, you're a good racist or whatever. You're a good whatever. The Italian family, they'll yell at you and squeeze you or something. I don't know. Japanese culture, they'll give you a quiet nod. I don't know. It's different for every family, every group. Okay? Based on not if you actually are it, they're all pretending. They don't actually have this. They don't know what it is. That's philosophy, nous. They don't have nous. They don't have philosophy. They have the appearance. It's how well you can pretend. Isn't that interesting? We all live a fake life until we discover the logos and the pathologos. Isn't that interesting? I think it's interesting. Okay, this is the standard, becomes the standard that we, for our roles that we play. Then we become like the role as we live. And then we become identified with the role. Probably going to affect our death and reincarnation. That's the Phaedo. Why? Because the urge towards likeness that imitation provides, which causes the pathologos, is more fundamental and primitive than desire. Okay. So why? So this is a devastating hierarchy that we are seeing. And what's the cause of all this? So you could say this is the division. These are the definitions. That becomes how it demonstrates. So I encourage you to pull this out and make a dialectic for yourself. But loosely speaking, could these be the key definitions based on appearance? Could this be how it demonstrates itself as the model and standard? Could these be the divisions, the ideal, the behavior, the acceptance, the role that you become like and then identified with? And then from these divisions, could we say that so one way of going from division to a conclusion or a synthesis of the division, one way we talked about is there a common theme? Because you can pull that out. Oh, it's all group thinking. So therefore, our conclusion is from this dialectic, group think. Group think. That could be our conclusion. Helped us to understand Trumpers or Nazis and so on. Italians, Japanese families. Groupthink. Another way of going from division to a synthesis or a conclusion is there something most consequential? It leads to an identity. That could be your conclusion. Therefore, so if that's definition, let's write it there and keep it. Is this the definition? Is this the demonstration? Is this the division? And then what's for our synthesis or conclusion? Synthesis. Therefore, identity or ourself. Most consequential. Or key term. So that's the most consequential. We could say, here's another way of coming to the conclusion or a synthesis from the division stage of the dialectic. Key term. Therefore, so what would be our conclusion? Therefore, this is all based on appearance. And the conclusion has two steps, synthesis and analysis. And we have to be careful to spell the whole word and not abbreviate it like we do the other ones. Analysis. So the synthesis is therefore appearance, and that's our synthesis, bringing this division to a synthesis, into a unity, into a greater level of whole, or just like what we're talking about doing in development, in spiritual development, cognitive development, raising to another level of whole. These are the parts, raising to another level of whole. Just like over here, we're looking at the parts of belief. That's what we're studying in this book. We're raising to see it as a whole and understanding. That's the art of midwifery. Therefore, analysis is to take that synthesis and bring it back to the start. That's analysis. Notice, ousia, self-reflection. Isn't that interesting? By doing the dialectic, you are being most like ousia that you can without actually being in the experience of being itself. Because being itself, over here, the experience of nous is ousia, mind knowing itself. That's how come you can actually confirm it in your experience. So, what would be a thing? Well, therefore, we can say that our pathologos dialectic led us to a new conclusion that goodness, beauty, and justice is all, and the model is based on appearance. There you go. Now, that's not the conclusion that this text came to. Another way, so we've already gone through a few different ways. Another way of bringing together the many is causally. So here are our divisions, ideal for the group, standard of behavior, sign of being accepted, based on appearance of the qualities, gives you a role to play based on that standard. You become like that role in your life, eventually become identified with it. Okay. Right. So the way that the conclusion that we were given is the cause. What's the cause of all of those divisions? The urge to urge towards likeness that imitation provides is more fundamental and primitive than desire. There you go. So why do we have this ideal for the group, this standard, this sign, this role that we become like, and then become identified with? Because of the causal principle that, let's make it orange. The urge towards likeness that imitation provides is more fundamental and let's give a different color actually, because we can say, well, the urge towards likeness is more powerful than desire. We could say, well, why is that? Because it's more fundamental, gives the mental in fun, fundamental and primitive. We talked about our caveman ancestry, our primitive, what was needed to survive the dangers of saber-toothed tigers as a species that hadn't yet developed logos and self-reflection to reach understanding and principles. Those that had an urge to be like the leader of the cave, the Donald Trump of the cave, and thought everything outside the cave was bad and scary. And don't do it. Don't venture out. Don't be anything different. Just be like what we are here. Which is the very principle that conservatives or right-wingers prey on. Likeness. The others are not like us. Remember what it was like when you were young, back in your family. Make America great again. All of the right-wing politicians use that expression. It's like I think it's from like the 40s. Like they all use it. It's not just Trump, make America great again. MAGA is not from Trump. They all use it. It's an appeal to be like the cave. And what do they use? Fear about things that are different. Women, immigrants, black people. What do they all pretend to be? Knowing, just like Trump. Anyway, so again, understand that this is what can be manipulated to get us to act against our own interests, politically and within ourselves. Why did you sabotage your connection with that girl you had a crush on? Why were you being like this role that wouldn't actually help you when you wanted to be your best? As above, so below. Okay, the urge towards likeness that imitation provides is more fundamental and primitive. Lots of I's in that word. Primitive. Than desire. The desire to leave the cave, the desire to be different, the desire than the unjust. The desire to go on our real quest that we are here for, to know and show the self. And desire. There we go. So there's a little dialectic for us. Hooray. Neat. More dialectics mean we're upgrading our thinking. Isn't that neat? I think it's neat. I sound like Marge Simpson with a banana. I just think they're neat. Or potato. I forget. I think they're neat. Each pathologos scene is unique because the model itself was unique. While we can understand this as a principle, every pathologos is unique. Just like a doctor learns the art of medicine as a principle, but every patient is unique. For parental figure, which means we can be a system, which is why, as we saw in chapter 1, the new paradigm for philosophy, spirituality, psychotherapy, all three. What makes it different than philosophy in the past? What's philosophy in the past? Random opinions, Kant's opinion, a whole bunch of different opinions that make you sound smart, justify your own ignorance. Harsh, but also true. Does that mean to say? No, it's honest to say. Now, of course, if that's the group that you're identified with, I am a philosopher. I spent a lot of money getting my PhD in philosophy. I like that I can quote Hegel and Kant and Brand and use them to justify my own opinions. You might look at me and say, well, you've got a chip on your shoulder when it comes to philosophers. In other words, don't judge us. Don't think. Why? Because within our group, you weren't allowed to question the system. You couldn't question. I know because I studied philosophy and I asked the questions. Why are we just given opinions? What's the actual truth? What about higher states of mind? What was I told? You shut up. But of course, because that's the game. We're understanding why. So, the new paradigm, because it's a model that we can understand that will apply differently to everyone because everyone's pathologos is unique, becomes a model of philosophy that has formerly lacked a model. Well, after Socrates was killed off by Aristotle and the moderns, the Latin tradition. Also, what lacks a model, a unified model, that can have different expressions, unique expressions? Spirituality. Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, Mormonism, Kashmir Sufism, lots of different spiritual traditions that are all unique. Can they be understood within a model that's universal? Yes. So the new paradigm or the art, you need a model that can be applied to all as an art for spirituality. Wouldn't that be neat? No more war over religion. What would John Lennon think of such a thing? Imagine. Okay, what also lacks a model? Psychotherapy. At least at the current, well, this is the model, but at the current time of recording, it's a eclectic tradition. Just pick and choose. Do whatever you want. You like person-centered counseling? You like transactional analysis? You like cognitive emotive behavioral therapy? You like shock therapy? Do what you will. So provided you paid the money to get the qualification. Does the same thing happen when you're fixing a car? Is medicine the same? No. What does that tell us? Philosophy. In our modern age, philosophy, psychotherapy, and spirituality lack a model and a art. Lacks a system. What are we seeing here? Just that. Isn't that neat? We're learning a model that can unify, rise to a greater level of whole. Oh, but also we're seeing that we can reflect philosophy, spirituality, and psychotherapy into the everyday world. Will become, therefore, a model for governing, ruling. Or, to put it simply, all of those things, whether it's philosophy, spirituality, governance, psychotherapy. It's the model for rising to the higher level of wholes that can allow you to look back and have to teach, model of teaching, to guide, model of rulership, guruship, mastership, and art. So the art of philosophy, the art of psychotherapy, the art of spirituality, the art of governance. So we could call it the paradigm of paradigms. Isn't that neat? Yes. Hello, Timmy. Welcome to the chat. Come at a good time. We just finished a dialectic. And we realize that what we are learning by applying this dialectic and going from beliefs to understanding is a kind of model and paradigm that is needed within the areas of humanity that we are formerly lacking one in. So in other words, one of the questions we have is, why can we be so intelligent when it comes to fixing cars or building computers, but why are we so immature and irrational when it comes to ourselves? Another way of saying that is, how come we can have a model of medicine and a model of computer science, but we lack a model of philosophy, spirituality, psychotherapy, and governance, so that all of these four realms are ruled by, without a model, with just personal opinions, so they evolve into chaos, conflict, fighting over opinions, division, enslavement, genocide, war, exploitation, capitalism, fascism, so on and so on. And well, one answer to this question is because, well, just that. Those are the things that we are immature and irrational about that relate to ourselves, are those kinds of things that lack a model. So when you ask, what kind of philosophy do I have? I'm set. Well, the answer is the philosophy. There is only one. There is only, if philosophy is something that is rational and mature, it would need a paradigm or model, just like medicine, just like fixing a car, that is true for all, but all of its expressions can be unique expressions of. Just like the art of medicine can be understood as a whole, anyone can become a doctor, but everyone who walks into your office is going to be a unique expression of that model. Just like Taoism, Hinduism, Mormonism are all different expressions within the model of spirituality. Just like person-centered counseling and behavior and motive therapy and transactional analysis are all different expressions within the model of psychotherapy. And just like Kant, Hegel, Nietzsche, Buddha are all different expressions within the model of philosophy. So what you want to really ask is, what is the model of philosophy and how can I learn it? Well, if you're asking that question, the answer is, what's the model of philosophy? The logos. And the dialectic is the structure. The logos and dialectic. How do I learn it? That's what we do on this channel. Join the YouTube group and you can read along with us as we read the Platonic dialogues, which is Socrates explaining how to master the art. Notice an art requires a model, the art of the logos. Now, if you're learning the art of the logos, you're going to get blocked because we also have the pathologos. That's what we're reading here. That's philosophical midwifery up in the top of the page. See philosophical midwifery in the pink? Philosophical midwifery is that very same art very same art of the logos and dialectic applied to the anti-logos. Not the anti-logos, the pathologos, the sick logos. The sick beliefs, the false beliefs about self and reality that are based on what appears to be greatness, beauty, and justice when we were young and dependent upon our parents, that become a model, that becomes the ideal for the group, becomes the standard of behavior within that group, shows the sign of being accepted within that family group, based on appearance, because they're all pretending. They're not actually philosophers. They're pretending, they're cosplaying as being great, beautiful, and just. Then you get a role within that family based on that standard. You play that role. Your life, you become more and more like that role until you become identified with that role. And our question is, how come? if this false belief of self and reality is so insidious, is the cause for all of human problems and the greatest conflicts within our soul, keeps us imprisoned on a never-ending repeating cycles of the same kind of negative states of mind, the same sort of failures, the same sort of negative experiences, not being able to progress outside of this group, why? That sounds terrible. Well, what we just saw by reading the text and by structuring it within the dialectic, so we're not just passively reading, we're doing our best to understand, which is the dialectic, which is philosophy. We realize that the cause of those things is that the urge towards being like, the urge towards likeness that we can get through imitation is more fundamental and primitive than the soul's desire to actual knowing of the self and reality that you get through the logos. So the pathologos is more powerful than our urge, than our desire for philosophy to know and show the self. Isn't that interesting? I think so. I hope you think so too. Let's keep reading. How much time do we have? Maybe we read a little bit more. Oh, and by the way, this understanding that we have by pulling out the key terms, putting them within a model of the dialectic, definition, demonstration, division, and then conclusion, which has 2 parts. Oh, neat. What's your book about? So we put it within the structure. We pull out the key terms from the text. As we talked about at the start of today, we're not patching it together with our other beliefs. Like, can we fit Jesus in there? Can we fit Joseph Smith in there? Can we fit Xenu, if you're a Scientologist, in there? No, we're just reading from the text without interpretation. Without interpretation is adding stuff in that isn't there, or leaving out stuff that is. I'm not doing that. Pulling out the key terms, organizing them within a structure, coming to a conclusion, and then we have to verify it. Does it work? When are you taken by the urge to likeness? I gave an example of running into a certain sort of guy, and there's this urge to be like him. Oh yeah, I want to be accepted by this guy. But then it always ends up bad. That guy was a jerk. Why did I suddenly give up my goals to listen to this guy? I got conned. I have a desire to be fully myself and free. I have a desire to be my own master. Why did I become a slave to that guy? And when I did I put on an old mask? Did I accept an old role? Was I a bootlicker? Was I a yes man? Was I a clown? Was it an old role that I become identified with? In other words, we can test and experience what we are understanding for ourselves. That's moving from belief, where our problems lie, to the understanding, to verifying it in experience. We are evolving, leveling up, or rising to the level of wholes. Your book, Timmy in chat, is focused on epistemology and ethics and a little bit of metaphysics. Neat. Well, I hope are you reading, well, I recommend, if you're writing a book, read this book, the one that we're doing on this channel, which is the shadow of those things. We were talking about epistemology here, the different cognitive functions. Thumbs up. We're talking about metaphysics, metaphysics being what is the realm of being, that which is prior to the physical world. That's the thing that we understand and have nous and phronesis of. That's what we learn in philosophy. So I hope that you are checking out our channel and you are reading the Balboa translation of philosophy, because the metaphysics of Socrates and Plato has been hidden for 1500 years, because all of the translations of the Platonic texts have been garbage. We are understanding why, because our translators have had pathologos themselves, and they have not grown up in a culture that has understood midwifery, which is the removal of your false pathologos that cause you to misread or mistranslate or interpret. Nevertheless, we have the Balboa translation, so you can gain the metaphysical understanding. That's called dianoia. So let's write dianoia in here. So you can have understanding of the physical world. That's ontology, the physical world. But you can also have dianoia, which is of the higher realm. So you can see understanding can help. We use understanding to, let's make some more room. We can use understanding of philosophical midwifery to understand the realm of belief. That's what we're doing. But also that same understanding, the same logos and dialectic is our doorway, our metaphysical yoga to understand the realm of being. That's what Socrates calls the exercise and activity of philosophy. Dia, N-O-I-A, dianoia. So understanding frees us from our problems. Dianoia is our ticket to the experience of the metaphysical realm that Socrates calls nous. But also when you're experiencing it, you need to make sense of it. That's dianoia. You need to integrate both of them to rise to a different level of whole that he calls phronesis. Notice the word phronesis, even though it's a cognitive level of our evolution that Socrates distinguishes from philosophy. If philosophy is this is another level. Philosophers aren't the end. Philosophia leads into philophronesis. Why is no one talking about philophronesis? Philosophia, love of wisdom, philophronesis, love of phronesis. Oh, the reason is the translators didn't translate it. They just left out this whole level. They also mistranslate these levels. So our understanding of Socrates and Plato has been garbage. And we can historically understand the reasons why. The Latin tradition after the Dark Ages, where these philosophers were murdered and the Latins took over, they lacked a language which could talk about this. But good news is we have the Balboa translation. You can see it for free. If you go to our channel, you can read along with us. You can find a link to the text below the videos, and you can realize that there's a whole different level beyond philosophy and beyond that. And Socrates is saying, read the text in a way to understand not just this, but also this. And when you see the difference, use that to figure out what this next level above phronesis is, philophronesis. I'm not going to tell you, meaning you're only going to get it if you do the work. But the good news is it's fun. Also, this kind of work that will allow us to learn philosophy in a way that hasn't been done for 1500 years. That's why we have this channel, to reawaken philosophy. Because it's a new way of being that's different from the group, it will surface your pathologos. But you're also on this channel, we learn philosophical midwifery, and we can take these blocks that get in the way of a higher level of being because we have an allegiance to our past beliefs. We would rather hold on to our precious beliefs that we have played a role in. I'm this kind of person. I like being a knower. I like it. I don't want to give up being the knower and that role to learn something new, to fundamentally change my whole historical view of philosophy, to fundamentally change my view of metaphysics. I have become identified with that role. I'll have to give that all up for a kind of curiosity and wonder and courage and open-mindedness that will allow me to evolve, but I'll give up this group, my acceptance within the group, how I appear. Good news is, when you ever recognize yourself thinking in that way, governed within your soul by the urge to be like that role that you have been playing and identified with, you write it down. It becomes the material for reflection to discover your unsuspected false beliefs about yourself that are your pathologos. In other words, if you take on this quest, you will get your problems. Fortunately, we're understanding how to how to free ourselves from problems. Because philosophy has two parts. This is called purification. That is called perfection. Socrates makes it very clear you have to do both. And of course you do. As we say, if you want to become a vet, you have to go to veterinary college to learn the art, but also you have to let go of your false beliefs that you had as a kid that cats marry dogs and that's where kittens and puppies come from. Because you can't have both. You can't have a false belief that's inconsistent with you being in your highest goals. So, what do you make of that little summary? Hopefully it won't make sense, but hopefully it will have puzzled you enormously, and that puzzlement can be a motivation to get into the kind of reading that we're doing on this channel. And if you do send me part of your book, I'm just going to say the same thing. I'll say, oh yeah, I can see evidence of your pathologos, and I can see evidence of how far you have got up the logos. Now we put this on a map because it's the same thing that, yes. Oh, great. Good for you. Oh, you got a link. Oh, do I click on a link from some stranger in chat? Can you be stealing my details? Oh, I don't know whether I should click links. I don't know if that's dangerous. Maybe I can search it in Google if you give me the search terms. Oh, and if you're interested, if you like what we've been doing here, you can join the Discord channel to stay in contact and share your work as you progress. Good way of getting feedback from others who are on this quest. But hopefully, if you do share your work, people will do this. Now that's a big mess. Okay, well, let's look at it anyway. It's a text sharing site. Join the Discord and we'll talk. So we understand this. Oh yeah, did that work? I think there's a link on, are you on YouTube or on Twitch? If you're on Twitch, there should be a link below. If that didn't work. It looks like you're very tech savvy because you typed a special thing in the chat. So if you can tell me how to, if that worked or if it didn't work, tell me how to make it work and I'll fix that. So we have this logos that we climb here, which has our state of mind. What's your highest vision of reality, self and reality? But also this rail of the ladder is how well have you understood it? So any author is at a certain level of development of his vision and his understanding of that vision. But equally so, oh, you're in the Discord. Hooray. Oh, neat. I'll check that out. Thank you for sharing that. And every human being or writer like yourself has their shadow of the ladder of the logos called the pathologos. So while the ladder of the logos is towards self and reality, which is our destiny, its shadow is a false image of self and reality. That's what we're learning on this series on midwifery, which causes our repeating cycles of failure caused by our pathologos, false beliefs. That's our fate. So it looks like a train on a train tracks. In other words, you can't get off it and there's an end and you're going to crash. That's the fate. That's what we have to purify ourselves from. Whereas destiny is this ladder up. Everyone is some level here or here within this arc. How far up and how far along? So there's really only two questions you can ask someone. Where are you at and where are you stuck? And that's how you read everybody, including the translators of Plato. That's what we've been doing as we read Plato. Thankfully, we have the Balboa translation where we can actually read the ancient Greek, and we have the internet so we can look up the words that are confusing. But then we can say, oh, where's the translator's problem? How come the translator didn't translate eidos as eidos? Why did he translate it as forms? Why did they ignore the word ousia? Why did they ignore the word autos? These are the most fundamental words for philosophy. Why are they not translated? And why is he using the word evil instead of bad? Oh, maybe we can see his false beliefs from his pathologos. Maybe we can see that his level of understanding of philosophy is below this level, which is interesting because it's the level between the physical world of becoming to the metaphysical world of being, which might explain why we haven't been able to do philosophy until the Balboa translation. New way of reading, which is pretty neat. So, yeah, thank you for joining. Thank you for posting. I hope you're open to feedback. I hope you have an open mind. I hope you're that kind of a philosopher. And the next thing that we're going to read is where we're up to. We put this section into a dialectic, which is neat because we're not just passively reading, we're doing it. We're doing it. We're demonstrating what we're defining. And yeah, maybe a good time to stop for the channel. Now, on the channel, I might do a raid because just as we are doing an exploration of the logos, the next best thing is another streamer who is probably the best I've seen so far of understanding the political and social dimension, the realm of being. Sorry, not the realm of being. Let's look at our map. So we study the realm of being above this line in the logos, but also to see how it's reflected in our political world. Sure. Oh, okay. So you've posted something. Let me react to. Okay. Sharing creations. Ooh. Wow. I'll need some time to read it and reflect. Thank you for sharing your image as well. That's really cool. I'll need some time to read it and reflect on it, and I'll get back to you next time. When we share on, if you're on the Discord, you'll get a notification when we go live. But if you want something to do now, while we are studying the realm of being, which is above this line, which is the cause of the physical problems, the fact that we can use our understanding of the logos to make sense of the problems in the physical world would require us to actually know what's going on in the physical world. And the best person I've seen is another Twitch streamer that we were going to raid if it works, who is just starting her stream now. She is a political streamer and commenter, and her takes are pretty much always dead on and insightful, and shows a rare kind of intelligence and compassion for understanding the logos, or the understanding the nature of our physical world, where we are at politically, and also understanding the causes of them. Now, of course, the logos isn't really on the table because that's our channel. Maybe when we become popular, it will become more widespread, but this is the best, most intelligent, insightful, and talented reporter and explainer of what's happening in our physical world politically. That's a Twitch streamer named Denims, and she is starting her stream now. So for those who have joined us in the chat, let's try and do a raid. Because yeah, she's the best of the Twitch streamers that I've seen. And a lot of fun and very interesting and great takes, and yeah, a rare intelligence and compassion, because understanding the physical world, especially without having been introduced to the logos and pathologos, can be so hard to do, because it seems like it's all chaos. It seems like there's no justice. It seems like no one is understanding the cause of these problems, so it's just problem after problem, exploitation and capitalism and genocide after genocide. This requires a very noble spirit and a compassion to stay with it, an intelligence to understand it, and a courage to stay with it even without being brought up in this tradition where you can understand the causes of it. The metaphysical causes. He's very good at understanding the physical causes. Actually, the psychological causes too. So as close to a philosopher as I've seen. So that's pretty neat. I hope you enjoy that. For those watching on YouTube, if you're looking for that sort of content, DENIMS, I think, is her Twitch handle. And if you want to understand political, want some good reporting, good news and reporting and commentary on the political situation. Again, the material that you can then apply the logos to, but again, it's just a metaphor for your own soul, because it may not be that humanity wakes up to the logos and pathologos causes of our problems, and not just our problems with the pathologos, our excellence and our destiny with the logos. Doesn't matter if the world comes along, because you can do it. But if you also want to know what's happening in the world, I recommend that channel too. So you can do it. And if you're new, stay with it. No. The question in the chat, am I communist? No, I'm a philosopher. Or rather, I think the best word is philodianoia. Because while philosophy is the love of wisdom, what we are doing is this. So wisdom refers to these levels, which is the realm of being. So what Socrates is interested in. But what we love is what I love is understanding, because understanding can be applied to the level of belief. So you can become a philosophical midwife. You can understand, you can reflect on the cause of your problems, your pathologos beliefs, to judge it against reality and justice to free yourself from it. Also, you can understand the same structure, can understand your dreams, but equally so, that same understanding, dianoia, you can use to understand the realm of nous. You can understand the spiritual dimension, the realm of being. But not only that, if you are able to separate from the physical world, your physical senses, and experience reality itself, bliss or beauty itself, what Plato says, dwell in the isles of the blessed, don't just stay there. In the Republic, Socrates says, don't stay dwelling in the isles of the blessed. Come back down into the cave of ignorance, those who are still attached to their beliefs of the physical world, and help them. But you can only help them if you've had the experience and you've understood it. Just because I've had an experience of being in a race car doesn't mean I have the art of a race car driver. I need to also understand it. So dianoia is our way to reach enlightenment or nous, or the realm of being, but it's also our way of understanding it so we can use it to help others. Hey, not only that, this isn't the highest level. We can see there's at least 2 more levels above. So it's the understanding that we can use to even understand this experience. Just as today we have been asking the question, not just what are the experience of our problems, but how can we understand our problems? Not just understand them, but understand its cause. How can we understand the cause of our problems? That's what makes it an art. That's what allows us to free ourselves from our pathologos and our human problems. Equally so, that's understanding applied to belief, we can understand even the cause of the metaphysical realm, the experience of pure being, ousia, mind knowing itself, because that had to have been caused by something, allowing us to go beyond even the Taoist experience of enlightenment. Because you can rank spiritual traditions along this map. So how do you do that? Dianoia. Having practiced the dialectic, systematic reflection, with the highest level of integrity and focus to understand its causes, so that when you even are in the experience of beauty itself, being itself, you've so ingrained it into your way of being, your way of reading, the same way of reading we've been doing today, such that you even apply it to that, the same way we apply it to this book, the same way that I would apply it to your book that you shared in Discord, allowing us to go beyond it, ultimately to the self. So what am I? Someone who loves dianoia. What's that called? Philodianoia. That's the game. So that's what I'd put on my business card if I was printing them. That's a joke. So on that note, that hopefully that's very confusing and puzzling and makes no sense. But intriguing enough to stay in the game. As you're in the game, keep going. Do your best to apply the dialectic to everything you do, especially our pathologos beliefs. Join the community, join the Discord, join the Twitch and YouTube. Leave your comments in the chat. If you join the Discord, you can share your ups and downs, because both are objects of reflection, objects of dianoia, and keep running the race. In other words, because this is literally the most meaningful thing you can do, Philodianoia is the best game in town, then what happens if you pursue your meaningful goals? You get your blocks. So what's that mean? If you're in this game, you will have to jump some hurdles. Keep going. Yeah, recognize the blocks, understand the blocks. Use your understanding, your dianoia of philosophical midwifery to recognize and understand them. Don't take them literally. You're not actually rubbish. It's not actually the self. Keep going. Eventually, you'll have a level of understanding where you'll be able to turn around at the end of the race, having reached a higher cognitive being, a higher level of whole, a higher epistemology and ontology. If you want to be fancy, you don't have to. I think it's silly to use those big words. You've reached a higher level of being. You've got to the end of the race. You jump the hurdles to get there. You can turn around from that higher level of whole and look back and remove those hurdles. So then you can run around the track another time, only you don't have to jump any hurdles. It's much easier. And this is what Socrates recommends as well, because then you can help others as they're jumping the hurdles. You can run alongside them in the track with no hurdles and help them. That's what it means to be a teacher, a guide, and using mastership of an art, which is going down. So those are two things that we've been talking about today. Rising to a greater level of wholes is our journey up, from beliefs to understanding, dianoia to nous to phronesis, all the way up to the self. And then also going back down. Although you don't go back down, you stay at your level, you're able to look down and help those others on the way up. In other words, to be a doctor, you climb this ladder, you go from beliefs to understanding medicine and the body and experiencing it and practicing and integrating it and identifying with it. You don't go back down to the level of ignorance you were when you were just a patient, but you can help those who are just patients from your level of mastership. That's the game. That's philodianoia. That's awakening philosophy. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you next time. And thank you so much for joining. And thanks to the new people who are in YouTube, watching along, leaving comments. I appreciate it. And again, stay with it. Stay in the race. Whatever you do, stay in the race. And we dance for you. We dance for you being in the race. You're the best if you are. And I'll see you next time.